Mental illnesses have not always been treated with as much caution and care as they are today. It is important to know the differences between back then and today. Knowing all the gruesome, torturous things they did to people can be very interesting and educational. Many of our ancestors may have had to go through these things. The methods they had back then, before they had good institutions, medicines, and methods, they chained, tortured, and killed people. This paper will further inform you of the things of the past. Paul Finkelman states in his article, "Through the ages, mental patients have been subject to torture called treatment, which has included being shackled to walls of dungeons, put in tanks of ice-cold water, spun in chairs for hours, and more recently, isolation. Most often without clothing, and they were strapped to beds with leather restraints, often in a spread-eagle position." He also states forced medications like powerful psychoactive drugs and forced labor called industrial therapy, and sometimes electroshock, which has become a more popular form of treatment after going out of vogue for a period in the 1970s and early 80s. Deborah Kent also tells about these tortures. She states they used these methods because they thought it would shock their brains back to normal. She also tells they used water torture to make the person go crazy, and they thought it would make them break their bad habits. Deborah Kent mentions the fact that they did not have the resources we have today, so they pretty much experimented different methods on the different patients to see which ones worked best. As it is stated in the mental health advocacy, generally everyone went to the same asylum unless they were very severe. Then they would go to different asylums for different treatments. It is stated that you would go to a different asylum depending on the severity of your mental illness, because each asylum provided different severity of medication and treatment. As it is referred in the health advocacy article, most insane persons often chained in the basement or attics at home, languishing in almshouses and jails, or roaming about neighborhoods. And if they did go to an asylum, they would be beaten if they did not act right and strapped into chairs on beds. It also states the difficulty of sustaining moral treatment and expensive therapy, plus the interactability of much mental illnesses and the failure of physicians to discover a somatic basis for it, dimmed the early high hopes and eventually alienated most advocates of moral treatment from the medicinal establishment. As Paul Finkelman states, they did not feel like dealing with them. He also states something like, they did not see them as actual human beings, they thought of them as animals. They did not feel they had to take good care of them because they were uncurable and would end up dying anyways. Deborah Kent mentions something like, they did not have specific medication to cure it. They just used their so-called treatments. Sometimes they would give the patient sleeping pills so they did not have to deal with them and just let them sleep. They would give them drugs thinking it would help to quiet them down so they did not have to deal with them. Deborah Kent talks about how they can be inherited. They can be birth defects from medicines or head trauma. They can also be caused by severe mental or physical trauma. They can be caused by childhood memories, memories of tragic events, or even just from head injuries. Paul Finkelman has written, "Some countries just chain the patients to beds. Also, some, if they knew that they had mental illnesses when they were infants, would just leave their babies somewhere because they could not take care of them. Some people would just let the patients die of starvation because they did not have the money to take care of them." The health advocacy states that they have discovered medications that help with these mental problems, and they do not use torture treatments anymore. They take good care of them in the hospitals now, and even some illnesses have cures. Health advocacy states there are hundreds of different types of mental illnesses around the world, some more severe than others, some that can be cured with just a simple prescription and therapy. Only some illnesses have cures. More, though, have not yet had a cure found. In conclusion, mental illnesses are treated much different now than they were. We do not torture, chain, or neglect the patients. In all, mental illnesses and its treatments have greatly evolved over the years.